It was May 7th, 1942, during the Battle of the Coral Sea, when Scouting Squadron 5 from the USS Yorktown were tasked with guarding against torpedo bombers, since fighters were few and far between at this time of the war. Lieutenant Stanley Swede Vedesa was leading a group of Scouting Squadron 5 when all of a sudden he and his formation were jumped by 9 Zeros. Lieutenant Vedesa orders break left, but no one heard him, and he was the only one to break left when all of a sudden a Zero dove on him. The Zero had overshot Swede, and he knew to keep the Zero in front of him and to approach and emerge so as to survive the fight. Swede skidded left as they approached by slamming his rudder to the firewall, then banked, circling to fend off the Zero from trying to get on his tail. They would then close at around 600 knots. Then all of a sudden the Zero was joined by a second fighter, called it 2v1 the hard way. The SBD wasn't meant for this type of fight, but Swede Vedesa was. The SBD had 2 50 cal machine guns and 2 30 caliber rear guns, but the rear guns were basically useless. The perforated dive flaps were designed to make this SBD an excellent and rugged dive bomber able to take abuse. But the A6 M30 was a lightweight fighter with no armor, but it had 2 20mm cannons and 2 smaller guns, making it a deadly adversary in the skies over the Pacific. The 2 Zeros were trying to overtake Swede by one going head up with him while the other tried to get on his tail, but he kept jinking left and banking to keep the second Zero in his face instead of one getting on his rear. Vegeta had seen what they were doing and was pulling a 9G turn reversal to keep each zero in front of him. Vedesa kept making these head-on passes, and the Zeros were having a very hard time keeping up with his erratic maneuvers, and they could not handle his 9G turns. Then, to make matters worse, a third Zero joined in, closing from overhead, firing at Swede's SBD. He knew he had to splash his pursuers if he was going to survive this dogfight. So now Swede had 2 Zeros from front and back while the third was diving on him. His SBD was taking damage, and the G's were taking a toll on Vedesa because he was having to withstand 9G turns to survive. The rear gunner was basically passed out and was in no condition to fire. Vedesa was looking for a mistake in the Zero's turn, and he finally found it after 17 minutes of dogfighting. Swede was able to get behind one of the Zeros. He fired a burst on it, and the Zero burst into flames and smoke, going down, splash 1 Zero. And after a vertical pass, the next Zero pulled up in front of him, and Swede was able to get a burst on him, then stalling and dropping away, splashing the second Zero. Now Vedesa was down to 1 Zero. One more decisive head-on pass and a deadly game of chicken. They kept closing. That was when Vedesa realized this Zero was bent on ramming him. As the 2 planes merged, they ended up colliding. But to his astonishment, Vedesa was still in air after a mid-air collision. The Zero could not handle such damage and splashed down, giving Vedesa his 3rd kill in an SBD dogfight because it was less armored than the Zero was. Lieutenant Stanley Swede Vedesa was awarded his 2nd Navy Cross and was given a transfer to the newly formed Fighter Squadron 10, also known as the Grim Reapers, on board the USS Enterprise, where he made history again, downing 7 Zeros in one mission, becoming an ace in a day. Stanley Swede Vedesa was the only pilot to be awarded the Navy Cross as a bomber and an aerial dogfighter in the U.S. Navy in World War II. He was awarded 3 Navy Crosses, 2 Bronze Stars, the Meritorious Service Medal, the Navy Commendation Medal, and was inducted into the Naval Carrier Hall of Fame in 1987. One of the giants of aerial combat, Lieutenant Stanley Swede Vedesa.
Well, there you go, guys. we hope you enjoyed this new little segment that we're gonna kind of pursue. Be sure to do the YouTube things, like, sub, noti bell, all that jazz, and yeah, definitely helps us out. So until next time.